everyone. I'm super excited for today's live stream because you're going to learn a lot and I'm going to learn a lot because we're here supported by Marino. Marino, thank you so much for joining us on this live stream. Everyone watching, Marino's Twitter link is in the description below. But Marino, please give yourself an intro for those few people who don't know you.
Thank you so much, Eddie. Thank you so much for having me on. My name is Marino Wijay. I live up in Canada. I am a developer advocate for a company called Solo.io, and that allows me to do a lot of different things, work with the community, get to conferences, travel a bit, and just have a lot of good fun. So, thank you so much, Eddie, for having me on here today.
It's awesome to be here. Thanks so much for teaching us. So today, everyone, we're going to learn about Kubernetes, and we're going to do it from scratch. I've created a new Civo account. I've had a bit of a play, so you'll see some activity, but I've deleted it all. And Marino's going to help us deploy WordPress to Kubernetes, but not just once, but twice. That means we can do it multiple times. So the idea is, rather than paying for, say, droplet hosting on DigitalOcean or something like that, you can have multiple hosted WordPresses on that, and you can do that. And I've done that for family members. But the downside is, if one of them crashes or whatever, you got to go manually restart it. Whereas if you pay like $5 a month for Kubernetes, if any of those pods crash, Kubernetes will just restart it, take care of it, and all the rest. So we're going to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, Marino, we're going to create a Kubernetes cluster. Yeah, create a Kubernetes cluster. Oh, I got a bit of echo. What changed? Are we good? Okay, we're good. Yeah, got okay, Kubernetes cluster. We're going to do some DNS. I've messed it up a bit at the moment, so Marino's going to help us fix it. And we're going to deploy MySQL to the Kubernetes cluster with an attached volume and, what's the word? Stateful something. Marino, help me out here.
It could be stateful set. I don't think that's...
Stateful set. No? Did I make that up?
That is a thing in Kubernetes, but I don't think we necessarily will be using that. But we actually are deploying stateful services.
Okay, got you. Cool. I look forward to learning more about that. And what else? Attached volumes. Yeah, let's just get started and let's learn as we go along. And if you all want to follow along, you get kind of $250 of credit when you sign up to Civo, which is pretty awesome. So I'm going to create lots of stuff today, and it's not going to cost me anything. So, and we do have two swags to give away, 2 swag packs from Civo to give away. So yeah, we'll have to see who contributes the most with questions. Maybe we'll create a repo and you all can contribute. Let's see. So great to have everyone here. Give some shout outs. I saw Dean was early on, Praduma, Julia. Who else have we got? Akuvi, and Julia likes your shirt, Marino. Oh, love Marino. Oh, shirt. Okay, so I don't know if it's love Marino and your shirt, or I'm not sure there. So super excited. Hey, Mikhail, awesome to have you here. Cool. So let me share my screen and let's get started. So if I come over to here, I've got my screen share and I've signed in to Civo. I highlighted my screen earlier, but you didn't see it. But this is what I was talking about. I just signed up a few days ago and I've got $250 worth of credit, which is pretty cool. So what should we do first, Marino?
Let me actually, you know what I'm going to do? I got to full screen this so I can see this a little bit better.
I can make it a bit bigger as well. Here we go.
All right. So let's take a look at a few things here. If you, so we're looking at the dashboard, and really that's just a high level of how much credits you have, what activity's been going on, so you can track some of the history of who might be, doing things in your account, spinning up clusters, maybe chewing up some of those credits. But it's really nice in terms of using this interface. I mean, Civo has made it so purpose-built, so purpose-specific that, for someone like me that just literally wants to get in, deploy clusters, and then test some applications, this is probably the fastest way to do it. So Civo really focuses in on 2 things. Like they'll give you a compute cluster where you can run like Linux or Windows or whatever kind of operating system if you're just trying to, test a few things out, or Kubernetes, which I'm sure that you're probably itching to know what it's about. So for developers out there or whoever's in the channel, if you don't know what Kubernetes is, it's a technology to scale, operate, and manage containers. Mainly because if you're doing 1 or 2 containers on your local system, that's fine. But when you take that container or a few containers and shoot it over to production, what ends up happening is someone else has to manage it because it lives on someone's infrastructure. And there are considerations around how you can operate that application, how it scales, how it becomes available or unavailable, and how you recover from that. So Kubernetes really helps with a lot of this operational toil that you would normally have to deal with. But it's become one of the most highly utilized container orchestration systems out there. So that being said, we're going to use Civo to spin up a Kubernetes cluster which runs our containers. And what Eddie is doing right now is he's downloading the Civo CLI, which effectively allows us to just manage a few resources within our Civo cloud. But what we're primarily here to do is effectively set our API key so that it's authenticated to use our Civo account. And then we'll proceed to also check our clusters and then download what we call the kubectl file. We won't actually create a cluster from within the CLI. We'll do that from the UI. And that's just to speed things up overall and give you a visual representation of what we're actually doing today.
Okay, sounds good. So just while you were talking, like you said, I installed Civo CLI just to save a bit of time. Wasn't sure how long it was going to take. You know, these things can take a bit of time sometimes. So let's see. Thank you so much, Rakesh. Don't forget to like the stream. Appreciate it. We'll be doing Hello World and more. Great to see lots of people joining. Thanks you all for your support. If you want to follow Marino on Twitter, link in the description below as well. And best part about Kubernetes is all open source. I love that, Paduma. Thank you so much. Okay, so what should I do next?
Okay, so you downloaded the Civo CLI. We have to now do our API key. So the thing to consider here is the moment you share this live with people, they'll have access to that API key. So you may want to consider regenerating that API key after the stream is done.
I will do it off screen. Let me know the command and I'll bring it up on screen and then I'll do it off screen so people don't see it.
So what you can do is if you want to, you're going to do this to the civo.com website. Because we're not authenticated into the Civo CLI right now.
Okay.
So this is the part you probably want to hide. But I'll guide you from memory.
Okay, let's do it.
So what you're going to want to do is head over to your account settings, and that should be along the left-hand panel. And then when you're in there, you should be able to see a section that talks about your API keys. Let me know if you see that.
I have got under settings, I've got profile, billing, activity, and quota.
Yeah. So click on profile.
Okay.
And then proceed to click on the security tab in the middle pane there.
Yes. Okay, I've got a key. Yep. Okay, I've got that key.
Exactly. So you're going to want to copy that key and maybe maybe open up another terminal so that we can save that key and apply it to a variable that that the Civo CLI can read and then process against your Civo CLI command or tool. So before that, let me, I actually have to remember to do this part myself.
It's something you do once. It looks like they say, add, here you go. Is how you add the key? Is this it? Yeah. So Civo API key, add, and then paste in the key. I'll do that off screen and I'll bring the terminal over in a second. So, just check. So I didn't check I got Civo installed, but I do. So that worked. So Civo API key, add, paste, and then I'll clear my. Okay, it says it's saved. So now I've cleared the console, so I can bring it back over. I probably should have done that before the live stream, but we did want to try and keep it as authentic as possible. So I have done this line here, obviously with my own key. Okay, sounds good. Everyone following along? Is this a bonus episode of Cake? I don't. Can you explain that a bit? I've kind of seen that on Twitter. Hey Sid, awesome to have you here.
Yeah, hey Sid, great to have you here as well. So David Flanagan, also known as Rawcode, runs this series called Clustered, where he brings two individuals or two teams onto a live stream. Obviously, beforehand, they're actually given a set of instructions to break a Kubernetes cluster and get that cluster to a point where you can actually deploy apps and access them. So Sid is probably making a reference to the time I was actually on that clustered episode and I was stumbling my way through trying to repair the cluster, but it was a very fun exercise just to kind of see, where things can go wrong with the Kubernetes cluster how you can fix it. I mean, quite honestly, we went to some real extremes to kind of damage that cluster, because you'll never see this stuff in the real world anymore. But it was just such a fun experience. You should try it sometime when you're ready.
That sounds good. Just a bit of history. So for those of you who've been Eddie Hub for a while, you'll know Sid. Sid helped us get our Kubernetes cluster and all our apps deployed on DigitalOcean. So really helped us. I think he did a couple of live streams and also one on Sid's YouTube channel, which I need to share. Do you have it, Marino, to hand? Do you know off the top of your head the URL?
Oh my gosh.
If not, I can find it. Sid, type in the name. It's just DevOps Directive, I think. I'm pretty sure. Let me bring it up and share it in the chat. But DevOps Directive, here we go. Yes, give Sid a follow on YouTube for Kubernetes, also Kubernetes stuff. And then David Flanagan joined us on a couple of live streams and helped loads behind the scenes. We're rewriting that whole Kubernetes cluster and the Eddie Hub apps with Pulumi, so infrastructure as code. So this is like a bit of a side note. We're going to try and do I've got some family members' WordPress sites that I just want to host on our Kubernetes cluster or on separate Kubernetes cluster. Now it being $5, like it's pretty affordable. So rather than having like a VM for $5, I'll just have a Kubernetes cluster for $5, and I can host one WordPress or 10 or 100 because I'm not getting loads of traffic anyway as well.
Yes. So there's one kind of consideration around that. So when you want to operate that minimally, you're basically operating with a single compute node in that cluster. And what that translates to is that at that point, if that node for whatever reason disappears or fails, now you have to wait for Kubernetes to reconcile by reprovisioning a brand new node and then reprovisioning those same container workloads back into that cluster. And the reason why this happens is because Kubernetes has this concept that it attempts to honor called desired state. So you tell it what you want it to look like, and it'll always make sure that it looks like what you want it to look like. So that's something that Kubernetes really works extremely hard to do. But the challenge is when you lose, a single node in that cluster, right? You're now waiting for that node to come online. And so you have a gap of unavailability of your application. So there are various considerations there, and we can talk about that towards the end. But yeah, you could absolutely operate with a very tiny footprint, and then if you need to, you can scale that up as you see demand and traffic come in. Now that being said, let's go ahead and test out just the Civo CLI just to make sure that it works.
I've just realized I messed something up. It said add like the key is a name, and I thought there was an underscore in there, and so I've just literally added the key straight away. So probably what I want to do is delete the keys and re-add it.
That's totally fine. That's totally fine.
I've messed it up. Sorry, my bad.
No worries. The other thing too is that when it comes to managing Kubernetes, there's the element of like, okay, are you going to spend the time to update the cluster whenever there's a new version that rolls out, or if there is some sort of security vulnerability that needs to be patched for maybe your nodes or the actual, Kubernetes version itself. And that could contribute to maybe a maintenance window. And these are some considerations that if you were to operate this as a business model, you would want to take into account, hey, this can go offline, or you have to have contingencies in place so that your end consumer doesn't experience any sort of outage of that nature.
No, that makes sense. And that's the beauty of it. It can scale quite easily. But when you kind of, I suppose, got side projects, then it's not the end of the world so much. So it's...
Exactly.
Yeah, it's great that you've done that. You can't delete a blank key, by the way, so I've really messed this up. It's a great start. So I'm going to add it again, and then I will worry about, we'll have two, but I'll just set a default. I think it's...
So if you run the command Civo API key add, and then just provide a name, and then, or whatever name, and then put in that key string right at the end, does that work?
Yeah, and then I'll hopefully set it as default. I really messed this up. I'm sorry, everyone, but it shows that it's live. I try to add like a default, but default is a reserved word, so it's added nothing as default. I've really got two now. One hasn't got a name, and one's got a name but no value. So I've really messed this up, and I can't show you on screen because it hasn't got my keys. So let me do this again, and yes, and while we're doing this, actually, Marina, if you wouldn't mind talking about the different types of like routing, like the load balancing? Do people have to have a physical load balancer in front? Can they do something internally? And then what are the pros and cons for doing it different ways?
Yeah, there's whenever you spin up a Kubernetes cluster, local or otherwise external, you always want to have to find a way to get into that cluster to access that application. If you're doing this at home on a single node, there's this concept of services networking and a specific feature called the node port service. What that means is you will access your application on the Kubernetes cluster's node IP. And that means if you want to access that same application, you'll just have to access it on another node in that same cluster, which actually creates a little bit of an inefficient way to do this, because now you're having to track node IPs all the time to be able to access this single application. Now, the other mechanism that Kubernetes can take advantage of is this load balancer functionality. Now, load balancers have existed for many, many years. The concept is I will send traffic to an endpoint. That endpoint happens to be a load balancer. And behind that load balancer will map to two other endpoints. So I, as an end user, I don't even know that I'm hitting a specific, final endpoint. I'm hitting a load balancer. I don't even know that I'm hitting a load balancer. I'm hitting something. And that something is going to process that traffic, that request, and then return the response for me, even though someone else behind that load balancer or behind that proxy is returning or responding. So interestingly enough, why this is important in the world of Kubernetes is because when you want to scale your application, you can't always route to each one individually, especially if you have multiple copies of the same thing. And the reason why you have multiple copies of the same thing is so that you can actually load share. You can split the load between multiple instances of the same thing so that multiple requests get served to the end users that are requesting some sort of result or response, whatever it might be. So the load balancer is going to sit there as something in the middle and processes that traffic and will direct it accordingly to whoever is able to respond to that based off of whoever is most utilized, based off of another algorithm like, hey, I'll do like an equal weight of traffic splitting or something along those lines. Now, in Kubernetes, we have something called a service of type load balancer, which we'll actually make use of. And what that does is it actually calls on a cloud load balancer in our case, because we're using Civo Cloud. We actually have to call on its load balancer, which is already hooked into the Kubernetes cluster that we're going to deploy. And it'll actually just say to that load balancer service, hey, we need access to you. Can you provision an IP for this workload we're trying to expose? And when I say expose, allow external access inbound. Let's allow traffic into the cluster. Now, this is the most simplest form of trying to get access to an app inside of our cluster, because we obviously are not going to just operate on one when we have many, many different kinds of applications that communicate with each other. We may be using something like an Ingress resource, or maybe today what we would call it as the Gateway API resource that Kubernetes offers, which actually I'm still digging into and I'm still learning about. But then there are other tools out there like the API gateway tools, or even service meshes that allow for accessing and even terminating your security boundaries. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah, so Sid's saying Trafiq is configured to use a node port into every cluster by default. Yes, that's true. When we actually do spin up a load balancer, though, it'll actually call on one of the load balancers within Civo. So that actually will spin up a public IP for us. And then we can take advantage of that public IP, which we actually need to use to actually access our WordPress application. So a lot of things around load balancers and whatnot. There's so much I can share about this. I think even Sid's got a great course on load balancing, or maybe a section on that. I know there are a lot of Kubernetes courses that cover this in depth. Maybe I'll share that later on.
That sounds good. And just to clarify, I mean, everyone, don't get scared. It sounds scarier than it is to get started. I mean, you can go really deep in it, but you can get things working a lot sooner. A question about what's Trafiq? What is that?
So Trafiq is actually an Ingress proxy, or also a load balancer as well, which is actually, I don't know how it's working specifically inside of Civo Cloud, but it is used for some of the internal load balancing, as well as I think if you did use the node port service, as Sid mentioned, it'll allow you to expose the actual node's IP and then use that to be able to access the application. Maybe Sid might be able to provide a little bit more context around that if you want to, Sid. No pressure. But yeah, I mean, that's it. It looks like you've got your API key sorted.
I have. I've called it Eddie, nice and,
Nice.
so we don't forget what it's called. And I've got a blank one here that I can't seem to get rid of, but that's fine. I deleted all the others.
That's okay. That's okay. So one quick test that we can check to make sure that our CLI is working is if we could type Civo Kubernetes ls.
It should come back with nothing, so I think I delete everything. Can I list the domains potentially? Would that work?
I'm not sure if there's a command. Actually, yeah, let's dig through it. Is there
there
network?
is, yes. So let's have a look.
Maybe
I'm guessing
domain ls?
a domain ls, I'm thinking. Yes, and we have one. Perfect.
There you go.
So we have
I learned something today.
We're all here to learn, which is what I love. So we're going to be using this domain today. We'll create some subdomains and we'll link that through the load balancer as mentioned by Marino, and then we'll link that through to our WordPress, and we'll scale up our WordPress to 2-3 pods and have a play and see how it all goes. And we want all of your input, so we're going to get coding soon. Kubernetes for president. Hey, Steve, how you doing? Steve's helped me loads in when I get stuck on Kubernetes and I don't want to pester Sid or David and so forth. So thank you so much, Steve. Question from Praduma. Do Civo provide auto load balancing? I'm not sure. From my understanding, I'm not sure what you mean. I thought it was auto. So I don't know if that means something to Marino or if Praduma, you could explain a bit more.
Yeah, if I understand Praduma, what that means is we don't have to go in and provision a load balancer ahead of time. What'll happen is when we call on or when we tell Kubernetes we want a load balancer, because it's targeted to Civo's cloud services, it'll actually go spin up the load balancing service for us on our behalf. So it saves us a step. All we're telling Kubernetes is we want a load balancer IP for this specific service that we're trying to expose.
Got you. Love that. Praduma, great question. I learned something new, so thank you so much. That's great. And before we get going, last one. Terrific is an Ingress controller. I guess they install it to configure to use node port to allow people to get traffic to their cluster without having to pay for a load balancer. Well, that's quite interesting. So the disadvantage, I suppose, is if you swap out the what's it called? The node of the cluster, you'll have potentially some more downtime. Whereas if you had a load balancer in front, it would know which one's alive and which one's not, and so forth.
Yeah, it really comes down to DNS actually, because DNS translates to the load balancer IP. But if you don't have the load balancer in place, you're actually having to put in every single node IP that you're aware of. And because that constantly changes, that creates admin overhead.
I see. So this would only be a temporary solution. Is you wouldn't use this in production? Got you.
Yeah, it's not a productionized approach.
Got you. Cool. Okay, sounds good. Let's get going. What should I do next?
All right, so let's continue in the UI actually, and we'll go over to the Kubernetes section, and we'll go out to spin up a cluster. Now, when we go to spin up a cluster, the other thing that we also have to consider is that extra small configuration that we see there. Even though it's small, $5 a month, we also have to assess if that's enough of resources that we need to be able to run our WordPress application. Maybe it might be, maybe it might not be. So it's a consideration there. Now, we can always start off with one. If we run into issues, we can always scale it up. That's not an issue. So let's start with that. We'll select the extra small.
And then I'm going to put this down to 1. Will that still work? Okay.
Yeah, it will.
Cool. Okay, firewalls.
So it'll actually create a firewall for you, and it exposes and allows us to access on HTTP anyways. So we don't have to sit there and fight with it.
Okay, extra small, nice. So monthly cost $5 a month, sounds good. Advanced options, one is ticked already. What's Flannel?
So when we need containers to communicate across that cluster, we actually need something called a container networking interface. And that allows one container inside of a pod to communicate with another one, and then maybe even with other parts. So if you look at a traditional network, You can think of this as a network switch, like a physical device where you plug in a bunch of cables so that other computers can communicate with each other. This is just something that's of a logical construct that we can program, we can configure, and there are so many variants. Right now we're seeing two. One of them is called Flannel, which is a very minimal container networking interface. And then the one next to it, Cilium, is a very highly advanced, highly powered, something called based off of something called eBPF based container networking interface, which is very, very tunable in a variety of different ways. This is for advanced production usage if you're trying to do some really, really interesting things or whatever. Ideally, though, what a CNI is a network switch for our containers.
Okay, we'll keep it on the simple one. I like that.
Yep.
And you do have a marketplace, which is pretty cool.
Exactly. Yeah. So the marketplace is if you just want to simplify your deployment streams of the different kinds of applications you might run inside of your cluster, you can just go select any one of these. And the thing to consider here is that we picked a very small configuration. So you obviously don't want to load it up. And we'll see the ramifications of trying to do something like this anyways, if inside the cluster. But this allows you to quickly deploy functional applications that you can go in and provide additional configuration on top of, instead of you having to go sit there and deploy it yourself.
Cool. Lots of choice. I'm seeing lots of stuff here.
Yeah.
I have to have a read out what some of these are, because I do recognize some of the names, but yes. Rancher I saw on Twitter recently, and Portainer as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll have to have a look. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of these fall into like either managing containers, seeing what containers are doing and how they're performing, and even the infrastructure underneath it, or providing some sort of security layer or boundary for allowing for levels of identity and trust between containers that need to communicate with each other and then outside of the cluster, or things that are coming inbound.
Here you go. So yes, this application will automatically be launched. Okay.
Oh, so we are using the Traffic node browser.
Sorry, no, this one. Sorry, I got it wrong. The node port one is installed by default. Do we need it? Shall I leave it on?
Yeah, we want to leave it as default as possible, so that it just makes it for a very straightforward and simple deployment.
Okay, and then what's the metrics server that's automatically, it's default as well?
Yeah, so the Kubernetes metrics server allows us to access a UI that we can see how our cluster is performing, and if it's hitting the top end of resource consumption. And then that might be a trigger for us to say, hey, let's scale this cluster up.
Okay, that sounds good. There are loads of tabs across here and some security runs as well. Right, okay, let's go back to featured. I'm going to create the cluster. It's super quick. I did have a play at the weekend, and I'm really impressed. And compared to DigitalOcean, this is like considerably faster. So a question from I'm going to pronounce your name wrong. I'm so sorry. Akuvi. I think what Marino was saying was, because we picked small as the cluster, the more we put on it, the more like resources it's going to take. So it's not that it's not recommended to use them. It's just not recommended to use too many. And if you do, check the resources, and you might need to scale up later on, because you don't want to be like maxing out the server. So we can see 100 seconds remaining. It's just like literally, I don't know what it started off at, 120 or something. It's pretty quick.
So we could even flip back over to the terminal and rerun the Civo Kubernetes ls command.
Okay, it says building. Nice.
So yeah, it should be done very soon. As you can see, the timer is very, very accurate. So this might be very, very useful in situations where you only need workloads to run for a certain period of time, but you can also get them online very, very quickly as well. So it's a very useful approach. The cloud environment that they offer is very simplistic, and it is very easy to interact with. And quite honestly, I think this is probably my favorite cloud to use. And that's, I think it's just because it's like so direct. If my next one would actually be Google Cloud. And it really comes down to usability and UI and even navigation. To be quite honest, everyone has different opinions on all the different cloud UIs and the way you can access their services. These are just my preferences overall, and I feel very aligned to them.
And that's really good. I made a video like a few months ago on comparing AWS, GCP, and DigitalOcean, and DigitalOcean like came out on top so far. But I hadn't used Civo by then. But I'm sorry, DigitalOcean. Civo is taking the first place. I think my next video might be very, very different. This is almost done. I have another question. So we talk about K8s, and here it says K3s. What's the difference?
So K3s is a different distribution that actually is effectively Kubernetes, but it's actually meant to be much more lighter weight. So they swap out some of the core components of Kubernetes to use lighter weight components. Like they use a different database to store all the information or the key value information of the cluster. And they use other subcomponents as well to just cut back on overall memory and CPU utilization. But what is really interesting is they work extremely hard to be in lockstep with open source Kubernetes. So it effectively provides you the exact same experience. I don't think there's anything that is misaligned with K3s. It's just most people will gravitate to using the actual fork of Kubernetes or the actual open source Kubernetes or a fork of it or a provider that uses it. And quite honestly, K3s is a very favorable solution out there. It's very, very perfect for like edge solutions, or if you have a very highly distributed application that has to live on the edge, much like on a CDN or something like that, you can create that with K3s much better than you could with Kubernetes.
Got you. Is there any downside? Do you lose anything if you're using a K3 rather than a K8?
Well, it comes down to supportability, right? And why I say that, I mean, other people will have other thoughts around this, but it really also comes down to K3s is its own separate open source project versus Kubernetes. So you don't have all the same people working on, that project of K3s. Although when it comes down to support, right, you can't go to the Kubernetes community for support as easily as you could go to the K3s community, which is obviously going to be a lot smaller in scale. So there are some advantages, some disadvantages. Resolving issues could take a little bit longer. I cannot confirm or deny that, but I can say for sure that because it's different, it's not mainstream at this point in time.
Got you.
That could be a consideration, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So if I run this command again, the status will be different.
Yes.
And it says it's active. Okay, we've got a Kubernetes cluster, everyone. Great work.
Yeah. Now, what we want to do is we actually want to pull down the Kubernetes configuration. And this Kubernetes configuration allows us to access the cluster. So there's a few ways we can do it. And we're going to actually do it using the Civo CLI.
Okay.
And what you're going to run is, I will tell you in a second. I just got to recall the command.
No worries. I have some documentation open here as well.
So, yeah, it is Civo Kubernetes config. And then the name of your cluster.
I got that above, so that's good.
And then space -- save space -- merge. So before you hit enter, I'll just quickly explain this. So what we're doing is we're targeting that particular Kubernetes cluster that we just spun up and pulling down its kubeconfig file. That kubeconfig file basically has a token in there that authenticates our Kubernetes CLI against this cluster. So we can access it, we can run operations against it, we can modify objects, whatever we want to do. We're running a whole bunch of HTTP operations against an API server. Now, the save component of it just really means we're downloading it, and the merge component is actually going into your existing kubeconfig file because you probably already have one from previous clusters that you might have used. And it's merging this config into your existing config. So you don't have to go in there and modify that configuration yourself, because that could actually become a little bit challenging and cumbersome, especially if you have a lot of configurations to different clusters.
Got you. I see what you mean. Yeah, I think I've deleted everything I've downloaded. So but it's good. Let's see. So it won't display anything on screen. Is that correct?
No, it won't. It'll just, once you hit that, it'll actually just merge the config down into your environment. And then you can go ahead and set your context.
And then does it do it in the local directory, or does it do it in a Civo kind of hidden directory?
No, it does it in your local directory here on your system here.
Okay, so let me move. I'm just going to switch to my downloads then. Okay, here we go. Oh,
Well, it's actually not going to download the config as a file to your system. It's actually just going to download the contents of the kubeconfig file and merge it with your existing one. So you can run this command anywhere you want. Yeah.
Got you. I think I didn't save it, which was a bit stupid. I thought I did.
Oh, no worries.
No, I lost it. I'll start again. Civo. Did anyone remember what it is? Civo, Kubernetes, config, save, merge.
Yes.
I never remember anything, so I'm super proud of myself right now. Let's do it. Oh, we busted it.
Uh-oh.
At least one argument. Oh, I didn't put the name in. Oh, I missed the name. It was before here, right? Was that correct?
Yeah, right here.
Like so. And this name, everyone that you get, I will copy it this time, but will be from when we listed not the API keys. Oh, we did ls, didn't we? When we listed the Kubernetes, it's this name here that we need. The name that we gave it on the UI. I have saved that this time. Let's do it. Okay. Oh yes, it's put it into the okay.
Exactly.
Got you.
Yep.
I always do it as an environment variable, so that's why I've never actually used that. So okay, cool.
Exactly. So right above your prompt there, you see those two commands it tells you to run.
Oh yes.
So
did not mean to do that. Yeah, this one here. Okay.
So if you run the first command, it will actually take your kubectl CLI and map that or target that towards your config towards the cluster. Exactly.
Nice.
And then now if you do a kubectl get node,
and check it works. Fingers crossed.
There you go.
5 minutes old, so it's definitely the right cluster, which we created probably about 5 minutes ago because I've been talking too much.
Exactly. So now at this point, like we're ready to deploy application. So yeah, right. This is awesome. So the really cool thing about our setup here today is it's very simple and anyone can do this. We could always get super complex in another video or another session at some point where we're starting to say, hey, our website has multiple pages to it. How do I get to each one? How do I set up that route accordingly based off of whoever comes in and what they're trying to hit? So there's ways we can set that up, and maybe we can save that for another day. But right now, so right now we're at this stage where we can go ahead and get ready to deploy our WordPress app. And what we really need at this point is 2 deployment files that I have stored, unless you've downloaded them.
I haven't. Nope. Let's do it. So let's just say WordPress. I'm gonna make it. So we can go through it bit by bit. I'll make a WordPress directory. And then we can start. So just to answer you got some shout outs. Hey VJ, awesome to have you here. Julian has a great question. It's something that took me a while to understand, and I think I've kind of got the idea, so I want to try, but everyone can correct me. Databases in Kubernetes. So how does that work? So you need to attach a volume, so therefore you can store the actual data on a separate volume. So therefore, if the pod gets restarted of MySQL or Mongo, whatever it is, then that way you don't lose your data. That's my understanding.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Whatever database you're using, what you can do is you can attach storage, a volume to that database, and that volume is going to live outside of the cluster. Or it can live inside the cluster if you decide to use host local storage, which obviously is never advisable for a variety of reasons. But you can map to storage that the cluster might be aware of. In our case, I think what we're doing is we are pulling from host local. I can't recall, but that's like, if you really want to set it up and make it very, very unique, you can actually use like NFS storage. So if you set up an NFS share, you could I even believe you can set up block storage if you really want to. But for databases, you're going to have to pick a storage tier that is going to align to like your need for IOPS and being able to write and read very quickly from that database for a variety of operations. So it's going to vary. You can deploy a distributed database inside of Kubernetes if you want to. And then that actually has its own advantages and disadvantages as well. Now, in our case, we're just going to deploy a simple MySQL DB, and we can even take a look at some of the YAML configuration after the fact, which is contained inside of both of those files there. But these configurations are basically telling us, one, how to deploy the application. Where are we pulling this container from? Are we attaching any volumes to this container so that it can write data to it? And that should be indicated further below. So if you actually scroll right to the bottom, it even says there right there. So it says there's a volume called MySQL persistent storage. And then there's something called a PD, or a persistent volume claim, where we're just telling Kubernetes that we need to claim some storage for this MySQL container that's going to house our data. Now, where this is coming from, if we actually scroll down a little, is that where it ends?
Yeah, that's where it ends.
Okay. So I believe it'll pull, we'll have to go and check and see, because I can't remember where it pulls from. But I believe it will store locally on the host itself. And that can always be changed to store somewhere else if you want to. But that's okay. Now, what we're really doing here is we're going to deploy the compute architecture, the networking architecture, and the storage architecture to support MySQL. And then we're additionally going to do the same for WordPress. And once those have been accomplished, there is networking that is inside that has been configured to say WordPress MySQL can talk to WordPress, the app itself, to allow for database storage. So we're simplifying this for you. All you really need to do is deploy these files, and then you're ready to go. But there's a couple of extra things that we have to worry about here. And what that comes down to is we have to create something called a secret for your WordPress app to be able to communicate with your MySQL database. And that secret is stored inside of Kubernetes. So you see that name right there, MySQL root password. That's where we're going to go out and create our own secret as well. Now, Eddie, I believe within this same repo, I have gone ahead and provided some instructions on how to go ahead and create that.
You've been very good.
Yes.
Super organized.
So we've created the cluster. We have the Civo CLI.
Yeah, perfect. Context, use the context. Oh, you did 3 nodes. Look at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go big or let's go home.
Exactly right.
Nice.
Okay, so this is exactly what we need right here. Step one. So what we're going to do is we're creating a customization file that basically is just going to allow us to generate a secret for usage with our MySQL service. So you can actually just copy the contents of exactly that. We'll have to make one modification, though, to the password field there, where it says password equals your password.
Sorry, say that again. I was looking at the chat.
No worries. So in that same set of text, right, there is a field called password equals your password.
Yes.
We need to change your underscore password to something else.
Okay, got you. Makes sense. So let me create this file as a secret.yaml. Does that work?
Actually,
it's not YAML, is it? It's shell.
Yeah, no, we're gonna. Bash. Yeah, so it's actually gonna go directly into. Yeah, we could do bash or shell. We're gonna go directly into the terminal anyways. So.
Okay. So we're going to change this to. Is there any way to get this auto generated for us, or should I just hit the keyboard?
This is how we generate it. Actually, this is the way to go. There is another way where we can do a one-liner, where we have to specify all of these same flags in one line of the command. But we still have to specify our own password.
Okay, got you.
Right. Now, I mean, there are tools out there that you could probably generate this automatically through some sort of life cycling and whatnot. But let's keep it simple for the audience.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. And anyway, this just to clarify again, security-wise, even if people know the password, our database won't be accessible outside the cluster. Is that correct? Only WordPress would get access to it. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So people would have to hop onto the WordPress server to get access anyway, even if they knew the password.
That is correct. Like you absolutely have to be able to hijack that container, and then you should be able to like get in there. Once you're in there, you should be able to hack your way into that database container. And what's very, very troubling is like the approach that we're taking right now is probably not the most secure approach, but for the sake of getting something up and online, it's pretty good. Now, you obviously want to implement as much security as you possibly can in this entire setup, because there are various opportunities for malicious actors out there in the internet that will definitely find their way to, getting into your cluster, right? Anyways, there are much more secure approaches, but
I'll hit my keyboard for now. Okay.
All right, there we go. That will work just fine. And yeah, we could just take this and run this bash script, or we can go ahead and just
Yeah, I could do it either way. You're right.
Yeah.
Actually, I like the idea of running the bash script. I can just go like this, right? I haven't done this in ages. Will that work?
No, just dot slash.
Oh yes, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah, good point. Ah, I'll have
you
to.
gotta go. Yeah,
Yeah.
chmod.
Oh
Thank you.
yeah. Oh yeah. I spelled it wrong. Aha. Chmod. We're going to give it run permissions on that file, and then third time lucky, we've run it. Oh, and we've got another file's appeared.
That's it. That's the file. Yep.
Got you. I see.
And
Okay,
the
so
only other thing, sorry, go ahead.
no. Carry on. Carry on.
Yeah, and the only other thing we need now is we just need to download those two other files. So the
Okay.
easiest way is probably just to clone the repo, and then you should be able to pull down those files along with the README if you really want.
No worries. I'm going to hit this copy button up here. I'm just going to cheat and create it down here. Just while I do this, I don't know if you want to answer Drav's question, and Sid's also shared their thoughts as well on it about is Kubernetes is complicated? Is the knowledge of Docker a must?
So to understand the internals of how containers function, Docker is an approach that actually allows you to really understand that, and actually, maybe even going up to build Docker containers will really help you understand how a container is processed in the world of Kubernetes. You could probably jump right into Kubernetes and deploy a bunch of stuff without really understanding containers. I don't advise that, and I'll tell you why. It's because I did this, and I'm actually working my way backwards to understand some of the lower level elements of containers and how they function. That being said, yes, Kubernetes is complicated. Start in the direction that you're most comfortable in. Start with, let's say you have a basic application that you want to containerize. Run that container somewhere, whether it be inside of Docker, and see how that functions. And then decide, hey, you want to scale that, and see how you scale that container and see the challenges with that, and then move on to Kubernetes and see how that solves that problem. Sid actually brought up a great point to talk about a deployment versus a stateful set. So a deployment is an artifact inside of Kubernetes that allows Kubernetes to say, I'm going to take this deployment manifest, which is just a specification of how my container is going to look, and deploy that. Now, this is stateless. And the reason why this is stateless is because I'm just running something that's going to be destroyed at some point in time. I don't really care about it. I don't care about the data that has to persist. Whereas stateful set is something of an approach that allows us to deploy stateful resources. So in our case, we have to deploy a stateful resource, which happens to be a MySQL database. But in our case, I don't think we're deploying it as a stateful set in our case. Yeah, we're not. We're actually deploying it as a deployment. So it's short-lived. Now, what really happens here is when it's short-lived, once we turn down the service, it's gone. Or once we delete the service, it's all gone. There is no data persisted anywhere. If we destroy the node, it's all gone. And this is why it's ideal to set up something external to the cluster where we can persist our data that can be read later on, that can be backed up, that can allow other systems to hook into it to read that data out of a database.
Got you. And that's where in Civo it has attached volumes. Is that correct?
Yeah. So if you go over to the volumes, you may see, okay, so there are no volumes that are created here in this space because it's everything that we're creating here is actually inside of the node itself. So we've provisioned storage inside of the node, a small amount, and whatever we create there will be stored there.
Got you. Okay, makes sense. And what does everyone, to make you aware, volume's really cheap. It's like 10 cents a gig. So if you want 10 gigs attached storage, then it's like $1 a month. Like it's not expensive, which I think is great.
Yeah, it actually opens up this opportunity to say, hey, maybe I can build my own backup service and store all my data up there in the cloud somewhere where it's low cost, it's accessible. I don't have to jump through a whole bunch of different hoops around the frequency of access and then determining which tier I really want to use. So it's an option.
Makes sense. Okay, so Should we walk through what we've got here? Because we've got a service, we've got the
Yes.
persistent volume claim, we've got the deployment.
Yeah, so let's quickly step through all of these. Now, a service is a networking component that allows us to communicate with the MySQL app on TCP port 3306. Now, interestingly enough, in this particular portion of the YAML, right, we actually have to specify a few key fields to make this work. The kind, telling Kubernetes that we're trying to create a service object to expose our app. We need to provide it a label and a name so that we can identify what it is. And then we also have to specify the port number that we're trying to access the service on. Now, if we don't specify anything else, actually, we do have to specify one more thing, which is the selector. And that's just saying, if for whatever reason, the pod that we're trying to expose disappears and we have to create a new one, it'll still have that same label, so we can provide the ability to expose it. We can still access that app because we're just looking for a label. We're not looking for a specific object at any given time, just a label. Now, all pods will have that label because Kubernetes and the desired state approach. Now, what we're doing, though, is that we're actually just only exposing it internally. And there's a reason why we do that, is because we don't need to allow anything else outside of the cluster to talk to that database, only the WordPress app. Now, the second thing is we're spinning up a persistent volume claim, which is going to say, hey, I just want to pull about 20 gigabytes of storage to be able to store some data, and only I can write to it. Only this app can write to it. That's all it's doing at this point. So we're just calling on storage at this point.
And this 20 gigs, will it add a volume or no?
So this shouldn't add a volume directly to here. I don't believe. We can actually check because sometimes I don't check my work. I'm not 100% sure. But we'll check and see if it actually does create a volume.
I thought it did. I've had a play at the weekend. I created some volumes, and off the top of my head, I thought it was when I specified the persistent volume claim, but it could have been somewhere else. Because I ended up with 2 volumes actually, which is quite interesting.
So it could create a volume if there is something called a storage class that is created inside of the cluster. And the storage class is a way to map your underlying infrastructure provider and its storage classes to Kubernetes. And so when you say, I want a persistent volume claim, it'll go to the storage class to see if there's something available. And then that might be the opportunity for it to create a volume for us. So we'll see that happen. Yeah.
Okay. I want to drop, I think that's quite big. So I'm going to drop it down to 5, not because it's expensive or anything, but just to be difficult, me.
Yeah. We'll see if we run into issues, which I don't think we will. I think we'll be fine. And then I think that the next one here is just talking about the structure of our application and how it's going to look. So we all obviously have to give that application a name. That application is going to be WordPress MySQL because this is our MySQL database. And a lot of it is just labeling to identify where the workload is so that other objects can provide action on top of it if necessary, or we can expose it as I previously mentioned. The other thing too that we're doing here is we're specifying the location of the container that we need to download and run. So the image right there, MySQL, with the tag 5.6 is just saying we're going to pull the MySQL container from a well-known public location for MySQL, and then the version we're pulling down is 5.6. And then aside from that, we're actually passing in some environment-specific details to the container. This is actually very similar to what you would do in Docker to create a Docker image or Docker container image. And we're specifying things like the port that we're accessing this service on. That's really all we're doing here. We're also saying here we're attaching a volume to it so that we can write data, and yeah, we're pretty much good to go. Now, this is one YAML. There is another YAML which specifies our WordPress app.
Before we jump into the WordPress, can we deploy this and see what happens?
Yeah. We can just deploy this one file here. The one thing I would say before you do that is I would also suggest...
I got quite excited, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So the one challenge here is that we want to make sure that that customization YAML also goes along with it. So we'll probably deploy that alongside the MySQL, and then we could deploy the WordPress afterwards, because we need the database up and online before we actually have our app up and online. And then things will reconcile. So let's go ahead and maybe...
I could do this one by itself first. Is that correct?
Yeah. You could do it by itself. And the way you would do that is do kubectl apply -f, and then the name of that file, customization.yaml. Hold on.
API version is not set.
Oh yeah, okay. So we have to pass it along with, I think we could try the -v flag. Hold on. Let's go back.
Okay, yeah. It's saying we can put validation false.
Yeah, so if you hit up arrow.
Yeah.
And then if we remove the -f and then type -v.
Okay.
And hit enter. Oh, it doesn't want to take it.
What's
So I think it wants you to deploy all 3 YAMLs together.
Is it not wanting like a specification like that? I had the error before.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, it wants that specification, but it's going to target those 2 files for that specification. So that's why it wants it to deploy at the same time. So let's go ahead and do that, because we'll still see what's going to happen when we attempt to deploy it. So if we just do a kubectl apply, no, we can just do the -v.
Okay.
And then I think dot.
Oh yeah, it'll pick up because it'll ignore the bash files, won't it? Do I need to put anything? I don't need to put like
no, just hit
or anything like that.
No, just hit the.
It really doesn't like that V flag.
Yeah, why doesn't it like that V flag? That is so weird, because that's how we've been.
I use it with F.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, not V. It's K. My bad.
Oh, okay. So what's the difference between K and F?
So it's just a different flag for passing in your files and whatnot. Here we're passing in a customization file, so you have to specify the -k as well.
Oh, we see. Got you. Okay, let's do it. Oh, we're still getting an error.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Did I copy and paste it wrong? No. Sure.
One more thing. Up arrow it and then add the / right afterwards.
Add what? Sorry.
//
Oh yeah, like that.
Yeah, and that should work.
Everyone in the chat, what do you think? Is this going to work? Out of 10. I was at a 9 before after quite a few failed attempts. I'm guessing this is like a 3, but I trust Marino, so maybe I'm back at 11 again.
Maybe it might not work with that bash file. We'll see what happens.
Sid saying K is for customize, F is for file. Okay. Okay, it's wrong. I don't know which part is wrong. I'm gonna wing it and try. It's still wrong.
Is that because of the bash file there? Or?
I'm gonna try that. Must be a directory. Oh.
Hold on. What is it saying? So accumulating resources, evals, mylink failure. Oh, you didn't change. Yeah.
What's wrong? Sorry.
Let's go back to look at the file names. Yeah, it has to be MySQL-deployment.yaml.
Oh, does it?
Or we change the customized file.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, okay, got you. Okay, so let me just do that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do that. I knew I copied it badly. My bad. I'm sorry. Sid, thank you so much for noticing. And you can see...
I should have just cloned the repo. That's what
yes, and I see everyone's shouting at me. We're just proving it's a live stream. We're just proving. Okay, this is out of 10, I reckon it's an 11. Okay, this command, right? This is the one.
This is the one.
Okay, let's do it. Something's happening. Something happened. There was movement.
We made it work. Okay, we're good. Okay, so now what we want to do is let's just do a kubectl get pods.
Oh, I locked my screen. That wasn't good. Stupid touch bar on the Mac. Let me share my screen again. Sorry, everyone. If I haven't broken enough already, I've literally just done that. Okay, we're back.
Nice. All right.
Okay. Kubectl. Yep. Sorry.
Get pods. Yep. Okay. So it's on its way to creating. Okay. So what's going on is, I think you were absolutely right about the volumes. So if we go back to the Civo tab,
refresh this page.
Yeah, refresh that page. Let's see if a volume is being created.
I think I'm gonna be right for once.
Yes.
2 were created. Okay.
Two
so this
were created. Okay.
And I think I know why, because in the MySQL, we specified we wanted a persistent volume claim of 5 gigs. So we have one there for 5 gigs. Mm-hmm. And then in the WordPress one, I did have a cheeky peek before. We have another one for 20 gigs. Mm-hmm. And just so I understand this correctly, the persistent volume claim is there's two, because for MySQL it's for the database, and for WordPress it's for like when you upload files and all the rest. Is that correct?
That is correct. Now,
Okay.
one thing I want to check though is if we go back to our terminal, which it should be creating and still on its way. If we type a kubectl, yeah, okay, there we go. It's up and running. If we type a kubectl get sc, and sc stands for storage class, hit enter.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so it actually is pulling from Civo right there. It just tells us that it's a Civo volume.
Okay, got you. But just to clarify, because you said before we weren't using an external volume, does that mean, is there anything we need to change in here to use that, or does it use it automatically?
So
Because,
it actually is using it automatically because
okay,
of the fact
awesome.
that there's a storage class specified. We could
Got
have
you.
modified the configuration to use local storage and call it host local storage as a configuration, which we can dig into if we want to. But ideally, I think because of the way it's set up, because of the way the cluster has been automated, I'm seeing dash K for Kumar, because of the way the cluster has hooked into the infrastructure provider, Civo, then whenever the storage class is specified, what happens is it'll just call on Civo storage. So that's
Okay.
actually something I didn't even realize was going on because I wasn't checking the volumes, but that's actually pretty cool. I learned that too.
Cool. I like this. We're all learning. Okay, great. So, um, yeah, we got two. And another question, actually. So I'm derailing this a lot.
Oh, that's fine.
This is 20 gigs. If I change it in the file to 5, will that reduce? I know it's not in the. It's using it like an external service. So I don't. I was just curious to know if that would change.
We could try it actually.
I'm gonna give it a go. Let's have a look. So,
Let's try it. Yeah.
just to make people aware, I have been playing with Kubernetes for a while, and usually when it's in your deployment or as a service, if you make any changes, Kubernetes will then just make the any changes it needs. But because this is an external service, and a lot of the time, a lot of disk storage that I've realized with DigitalOcean or whatever it is, usually they can go up, but they can't go down. So that's why I was curious to know if it was going to work. So can I use the same command, just apply all the files again?
Yep.
Let's go.
I'll tell you
Is
something.
invalid. Yeah, cannot be less than the previous value. I thought that might be the case. Okay, no worries. Well, we're going to, I'll put that back to what it was. Okay, so what shall we do next?
So one thing that you could do to get around that, right? You could always create a new volume and attach that to the same deployment. So you can actually redeploy the deployment spec with an additional set of fields for that brand new volume you want to create,
Got you.
and then delete the old volume. Is a way around that, right? Which is a little bit more work to get there. But there are limitations with trying to downsize because of the logical targets that have been created. And that has been provisioned ahead of time for you for your usage.
Got you. Okay, makes sense. Okay, we won't do that now. But it's really interesting to know that that's a way around it. So thank you so much. Everyone, give this video a thumbs up and follow Marino on Twitter. Link is in the description below. Okay, what should we do next?
Now we're at this point where apps should be accessible. And if you're comfortable, because we'll always go back in and delete, we can check our load balancer, by the way, and see if
Yeah,
there's
I
a load
wondered if
balancer.
it came up or not. So I was quite curious.
Yeah, so go click the load balancer section.
Okay, I've just clicked it. Yeah, we can create stuff. We do have a load balancer. Okay.
There we go. Okay, so it pulled in a load balancer called from the infrastructure. Now, and it's using the round robin algorithm, which means if you have multiple copies of your application, which you can scale inside of Kubernetes, it'll just send the traffic, one by one to each one of those copies. It won't just send all of the traffic to one. The other thing too is that IP is something that we're going to use, but we can also check that IP inside of Kubernetes. By the way, you're going to want to delete this afterwards so that someone else doesn't try to use it. But if we go back to our CLI,
yep,
and we type in kubectl get svc, which stands for services, SVC. Yeah. That load balancer IP right there, 74.220.17.96.
Oh, yeah.
We need that to create our DNS record.
Got you. Okay, makes sense.
Now that we have that IP, let's go into our terminal. Sorry, not our terminals, our UI, DNS, And under there, we can click DNS records. Yep.
So should I ditch this star one that I did? I was telling Marina how smart I was being, and I clicked star, and Marina's like, let's pick them as needed. And I'm like, okay. So I'm gonna.
So your load balancer, your load balancer IP is different anyways. So we could either edit it or change it. Doesn't really matter.
Let's delete it, and let's add new records. Was it a record? Perfect.
Yeah. So a quick lesson for everyone here, just DNS. So there are a few types of records that exist within the world of DNS. There's something called the A record, which traditionally maps an IPv4 address to a host name. And there's also something called the quad A record, which maps an IPv6 address to a host name. You would use something called a CNAME or a canonical name, which allows you to map another host name to a host name. So let's just say you had multiple domains that wanted to map to one single domain. You could use a CNAME for that. And then there are other resources here that are tied into your Exchange service, your mail service and some other services if you wanted to create a very distributed setup. But most of the time, you're probably going to be using an A record to be able to expose your services.
Got you. And then this one, we can just call it like WordPress 1, maybe?
So here's the thing that we want to consider in terms of how we're accessing it, right? Okay. So if we type in WordPress 1, we also want to append, what's the word append? Whatever we put whatever we put at the end is our domain name. So if it's .domain, then that's what we want to use to get to it.
Got you. Yeah. So if I put in WordPress 1, would the whole thing become what we would use in the browser,
exactly.
Like that?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. I think WordPress 1 sounds good because it's a kind of like client 1 or whatever we want to call it. Maybe even client 1 might be a better example, like client 1. Okay. Hit add. Is that good?
That's it. Did it throw an error? Nope. Okay, perfect.
All good. Okay.
So when we take that exact same URL, so I'll actually take that URL and paste it into my browser. Client1.jowd studios. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Jowd Studios is correct. It's a very old domain of mine that I keep using. Steve says, let's go. Yes. I Google it every time. Freaking domains and DNS.
I wonder if I spelled it J-A-O-U.
I can drop it in the private chat. J-A-O-U-D-E Studios.
So it might take a few to propagate throughout the internet. And this is one of the interesting things about DNS, right? You're trying to make this globally available. And so you've tied this to your name servers. Oh, by the way, you did the name server stuff, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
I'm pretty sure I did. I might have to log in and check. No, I did. Worst case, I can put in a host file, right? Host entry. Let me do that. I think I might have one in already, which might be causing a problem. Let me check.
I'm trying to access it externally, and I think because
no, I don't. Okay.
Yeah, and you could basically take that same IP and create your entry.
I could add one. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now another. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, just to save the DNS.
Yeah.
Resolving. Okay.
So the interesting thing about host names is that if you're using the host file, right, that's just tied to your single host, the host that you're working on. And one of the challenges with that is that's not available to everyone, right? This is a great local hack if you're trying to just demonstrate something or test something out. But if you really want to test it out, use a domain name, use DNS servers to really propagate your service externally so that you can get a true response. So I'm hitting the website. I'm getting error empty response. So I'm curious to see if our app is actually functional at the moment.
Okay. So just I think Steve says they've got the DNS resolving. I must have some cache issues, so I'll leave it in my host file. And another thing we can check, and correct me if I'm wrong, and we could do a port forward, right, with kubectl.
Yeah, we can do a kubectl port forward, but we don't need to actually.
Okay.
Because we already have the public IP, 74.220. We can just take that IP and drop it in our browser too.
Okay, let's have a look. How will it know which Kubernetes service to pass it to?
Because we only specified one service that'll take advantage of the load balancer. And we've only got one port listening in right now, which is port 80.
Got you.
So assuming that our app is actually functional, which we actually didn't verify, we didn't check to see if it was fully working. If we do a kubectl get all.
Okay, get all. Okay.
We'll see if everything looks. Oh, we have an issue here.
Oh, backing off.
Yeah, we have an issue here. So,
Busted.
Okay, so this could be for a number of reasons. So we selected a 1 gig, 1 CPU configuration. So we can actually dig into this. If we actually copy the name of any one of those containers, that full name, without the pod. And then we type in kubectl describe pod. And then, and then hit enter. So what is it telling us? Failed start, restarting container, attached the volume. So it made it pretty far. If we scroll up, we might be able to see some other details. Terminated, waiting, error.
If I messed up the naming of the secrets file, I guess that would have thrown an obvious error.
That is a possibility. That is a possibility. I mean, we could just we could check the logs too. So exactly what Sid is saying. So we could do kubectl logs and then the name of the pod, and it should tell us what error we're seeing.
It's going to be the password, isn't it? I messed it up.
No
service or name. Okay.
Interesting.
So should we go to the MySQL's not up though either. So the WordPress not connecting to MySQL makes sense because MySQL isn't running.
So let's take a look at the MySQL log.
Yes, let's get the MySQL. I haven't done so much debugging in Kubernetes. This is great.
It's the one below. It's the one below.
Okay. I think it switched. They switched positions. Okay. It's a trick. It's a trap. So we'll do should we do describe again for the MySQL, and then we can always do the logs.
Yeah, we can do the describe.
To see anything obvious.
Nothing.
Okay, so let's grab the logs and see. There we go. Well, that doesn't look very helpful.
Yeah, it does not. So we could try a couple of things here. We can remove everything and then restart it again, which is fine. We'll just have to go and update our DNS record again and change some IPs. So we could do a probe issues.
So what was that? I'm reading the chat as well. It's quite funny.
There's a lot of different things, but I think if we backtrack a bit, maybe just kill our deployment and then redeploy it. So kubectl delete dash
everything.
No. I think we could try -k. I've never tried it with the -k flag, and then /.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's see what happens.
Oh my God, Google's down.
Oh my God.
Google.com. It was running on a micro server. No, I'm joking. So in theory now, if I do a get all again, there should be nothing.
Yeah, that's fine. And that's that's expected. So we could attempt to redeploy everything again. Go ahead.
I have another question. So will these get deleted then as well? So not the networking, but the load balancer, the volumes, everything should clean up after itself. Is that correct?
Exactly. So if you go there and refresh,
no volumes. Okay.
Load balancer should be gone too. So that IP becomes gone, unusable.
And Kubernetes is still up and running because we haven't destroyed that. So that's perfect.
Correct.
I love that.
One thing I think we should consider doing is maybe scaling this up to 2 nodes, just so that we have a little bit more juice to give it.
Okay, so 2 nodes, not a bigger node.
If we were to do a bigger node, I think we would have to create a new node pool with a bigger size and then inject that into the cluster. Actually, look, it says scale up, scale down. Maybe we could try with that. See if it allows us to do.
So it'd still be a single node, is that correct? But just be a juicier node. Oh no, it's going to increase the nodes.
So
we have to delete it because you're talking about making a bigger instance rather than having multiple instances. Is that correct?
Well, we could have both. We could have a bigger instance and multiple instances. We could just have multiple instances.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I want to ditch it. Let's do it. Who's with me?
Let's ditch it. Let's do it.
Let's ditch it. Let's go crazy. We got money to spend. We got $200, $250. Okay, let's ditch it. This cannot be undone. Let's do it. Okay. We're going to call it again. Jowd Studio is going to give it the same name. We're going to go 3 nodes, not 1, not 2, but 3. The firewall will keep the same. We're not going to go extra small. Should we go small?
Medium? Yeah, I think we could do small. We can get away with small.
Okay, small. Okay, we're not going to everything default. Hit create cluster. We're going to be back to where we were in literally 2 minutes. It's going to be quick.
While that's going on, let's see what's going on in the chat here.
I'm scared to look. What have people been talking about? Julia says, learning so many new things. Awesome. Love that, Julia. Julia, look forward to seeing you next week. We're going to geek out loads as well. I can't wait. Yeah, Stephen, where have you been? We haven't seen any hub in ages. You've been too busy earning that money. You've forgotten all about us. Stephen's going, okay, right. Burn all the money. I've got 2 months to use this credit. I might as well use it, right? and the cost of this is $10, $20, $30 a month. That's for 2 months. It's $60, and I got $250. So I'm not even close to using the free budget they give you up for signing up. So might as well use it.
Yeah, you're going to be running this for maybe max an hour, which is probably going to be much less than $1 anyways. So, right.
I was planning on keeping this up for ages. It's got 3, right? This is production ready now. It's got 3 nodes.
Production ready. I mean, there's probably many tools you probably have to load on there before you get into that state. But yeah, it's definitely fun.
Not long to go.
I know, isn't that cool? So we could actually go back and run Civo Kubernetes LS and see what happened.
That's true. Let's have a look. We've got 3 nodes, 1 pool. Could you explain that a bit, please? So 3 nodes, I get that. There's 3 physical, virtual. I don't know if that makes sense, but like 3 different nodes. But what does the pools mean? Does that mean like an extra as a kind of a backup, or is it something else?
No, those 3 nodes are actually contained in that 1 pool. So I could have a second pool with an additional 3 nodes if I wanted to, or a third pool with 3 more nodes, or however many nodes I want to. I'm not sure if Civo is able to do this today, but the idea of having multiple pools is that you could have 1 pool in London, another pool in Singapore, and a third pool in North America to distribute your load a little bit. Yeah.
And so, in theory, could you have those pools across different cloud providers as well? So, is that a possibility or no?
No. So if you were looking to use multiple cloud providers and still retain, a common Kubernetes experience, you're looking at a few tools or a few additional systems and layers of abstraction, which we can always dig into if we want to.
No, that's good. I'm happy to stick with 1. That's good. I'm just happy just to get something deployed. Yeah. Like forget multiple clouds. It's green.
Yes. Woo! All right. Okay. We have to download the kubeconfig file.
Oh, remind me how I did that. It was config. And will it override the other one?
Yeah, the other one might still be there. So that's one of the downsides. We have to go in and delete that manually at times. But there are tools that actually help with that, which I'll mention. I don't know if it's still around, but it's called kubectl. And kubectl, if it's still available. Oh, actually, now it's called. Hold on. Maybe it is called kubectl still.
And instead of the merge, could I just remove the merge and it will overwrite it? Is that how it would work?
You could try that. I've never tried the flag without the merge. Let's do it. Let's see.
How can I list what we've got already so we can see if it worked? Is there a way to
can? Yeah. So if you actually Control C or save this so that you can get back to it later.
I've got it saved.
If you're running kubectl config view.
It's not going to list anything private or anything, is it?
No,
I'm
it'll
going
just
to
list the
delete it
names.
anyway, so it's
Yeah.
okay.
So those are all, and you want to delete these anyways, because that's one of the clusters that we had previously. So remember that first cluster we spun up?
Oh, that's where is that one?
The one at the very top.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, that's the very first cluster we spun up.
Got
And
you.
what's interesting is the client certs are redacted anyways, so you won't have to worry about that being leaked out. But either way, like this is a useless configuration primarily because the cluster doesn't exist anymore. So
Okay.
yeah. Now, there's another command we can run, and I think I actually listed it in the repo. It's kubectl config config get dash contexts. Get dash context as one word.
Oh, okay, my bad. Like that.
No worries. Yeah, with the S at the end.
Oh, context S.
Yeah. So now it tells us the two contexts that were there for our kube config. And quite honestly, we could go in and manually delete some of this stuff if we wanted to. But like I mentioned, there are tools that'll help us clean up. Now, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, what happens if I run help afterwards? Would it like give us like a, there is no delete command. I thought there might be like a remove or something.
There actually is a delete command, but you actually have to specify the name of the context. So what you can do is you can run kubectl config. I think it's delete context or remove context. I can't remember now. Actually, use the help command, config dash help.
Oh, so without that, yeah, good idea. Let's have a look. Debug live. This is real. Delete context.
There you go.
You were right. You're always right. Sometimes.
I might have stumbled upon that command like years ago or something. Context with an S, and then no, maybe without the S.
Okay, so deleting one singular one. Okay, and then I give it the name. So what do we have listed? So we've got, are these the names? So I don't know what this one is. This must be an old one. I was deleted.
Yeah, it might be a really old one. You might have been testing some CI/CD stuff, maybe.
Deleted. Right. Okay, let's delete the other one as well. And then we are good to go. Okay, so if we do another get context, we have nothing. So now I've got in my, I have to remove, when you copy and paste it removes your thing. Damn it. Config, not delete. We'll go through the history. Let's have a look. We'll get there. Not used. This one.
That's good? It. Is that the name of your cluster? Yeah.
Yes, I gave it the same name. And then we will call these two. Okay, we're clicking on gas now, everyone. We're clicking on gas. It's going to work second time, we hope, sometimes. Let's have a look. Oh, that's taking a bit longer than I thought.
It'll go. It's just locking you right now. Yeah.
Okay, got you. Okay, got worried for a second then. Have to run. Sid, thank you so much for joining. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks,
have a great day.
Thanks for the assist, the side assist.
Does merge not do any magic sauce? Yeah, I think it keeps adding to it. Well, I had a lot of stuff in there I need to get rid of.
Ooh, interesting. Timeout.
Oh.
Hold on a second.
Did I bust it?
No, it should be fine. Let's check your context again. Yeah, there's only one there.
Is that correct that they're all the same name? Is that how they were before? I didn't pay attention. Oh, yes, they are all the same name. Okay, that's fine.
Oh, it's a timeout. So maybe it just wasn't responding. We could try it again and see if it responds.
I'm going to do get all. Let's get everything. Oh, we got nothing running on it, I suppose. Oh, this is not looking good. We properly busted it now. While that's thinking about it, let's have a look.
Looks to be healthy.
Looks to be okay. Let me do a refresh. I don't know if it runs WebSockets or not. Yeah, it seems fine. Why did I delete the Kubernetes cluster? Eddie, don't do that live.
That should be fine. What we can do is we can probably just rerun the... So maybe when you rerun that command, the Civo Kubernetes config, use all lowercase.
For this one?
Yeah.
That worked before, though. Let's have a look. Okay. Let's have a look. Interesting to know if that's an issue. Doesn't like something. I deleted the context before. I'm sure I busted it. Oh, maybe the load balancer's not up. They're pretty quick though.
But the thing is, you're not accessing this particular load balancer.
Oh
It's
yes, of
actually,
course. It's going
yeah,
directly, and we haven't run the config to bring up the load balancer yet.
yeah.
Ah,
So
yes.
interestingly enough, I've got a cluster that I can quickly test and see if I'm getting a response.
I have.
Ooh, actually, I did get a response. So
Okay.
something is good on my end. There could be something wrong on
Mm.
your end. Um,
That's interesting. What other can I check?
so we could just remove the context again and then try to download it all together and see if that might fix it.
Let's
So that we,
try. Let's give it a go. So we did the delete context Java Studios.
yep. And then if we go ahead and
This removed your active context. Okay, that's fine. Okay. So if I do get context, nothing. Yep. Okay, and what do I do next? Sorry.
and then we're just going to pull the config back. So
Oh,
Civo
again.
Kubernetes, yeah,
Here we go. This one.
that's right.
Let's do it. Okay. And to access your cluster, do this. Okay. What do you think out of 10, everyone? Is it going to work? Is it not? Let's see.
Crossing my fingers. Ooh. Ooh. I don't know. You know,
That's
it's
an
funny.
interesting one.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm not sure what happened with the. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's not going to be me messing with my host file or anything like that, because I guess we're not using a domain here or anything like that. We're going directly.
That may contribute to it.
Because
You
I
may
do
wanna
have, yeah, shall I remove it out of my host file?
Yeah.
I will need sudo for that. I wonder if, because now it's going to have a different IP and all the rest. But then that's only for the subdomains. Actually, that shouldn't have an issue, I don't think.
Can your? I'm wondering if your host can. Well, the thing is though, it timed out. So interesting. That's very interesting. Because I can get to my cluster no problem.
I wonder if I delete that, I'm gonna put this back to capitals. That's what we had the first time when it worked. And it's definitely getting that. So it's obviously connecting to the cluster to get there, right? It's not. Oh, interesting. It has put it lowercase, even though I put it. Oh no, did I do it uppercase? What did I do? No, I did do it uppercase, but it changes it to lowercase. Okay, got you. Get node. The only difference is from before is we have 3 nodes, but I guess that wouldn't make a difference, right? Because that's abstracted away from us. We don't
Exactly. Yeah.
We just.
We're right now using our token to access the kube API server, so that kube API server is our entry point to access those nodes. We're actually trying to talk to the control plane right now.
Okay.
And yeah.
So could it be? I wonder if my API key is gone. We didn't do anything with the API. Let me bring it off screen and have a look.
Yeah, your API key should continue to function as normal.
Yeah.
Because if you're able, maybe if you ran the Civo Kubernetes LS, you should still be able to see the cluster.
Yeah, my key is still there, so that still works. Sorry, what were you saying? Which one should I run?
You should be able to see Civo Kubernetes LS and see the clusters in there.
Oh yeah, good point.
Yeah. So it's able to pick it up.
That's true.
And it even says that's the name of your cluster is uppercase. So yeah, it is really weird. Real life collab.
Yeah, thank you, Mikhail. If it's a live stream, you're going to have issues. And poor Marino even prepared for this, so he's like, no hiccups. Going to prepare for it. Messaging me late last night, sending me GitHub repos, and we still have an issue. There's so many variables, but this is like real life. So when people see a 4-minute video making a Kubernetes cluster and deploying 5 apps in 4 minutes, you're just seeing like the highlights, like the best parts. It's not real life. Otherwise, we'd work 1 day a week and take the rest of the week off. I
am puzzled why it's timing out.
So we can't run any kubectl commands, basically.
No, it doesn't seem
Civo
like
commands work. So I have a couple of plan Bs and Cs. So one could be to delete the cluster and start again.
Yep, we can try that again.
Another one would be, I'm stuck. That's my only one I got.
My plan C would just be to flip to my screen, and then I could show you what I get. And
we can flip to your screen and have a look if you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Steve says you need an apology video. Go okay, let's flip to your screen, and I'm going to delete this and while you're sharing your screen to save time. And I might. We've been going for an hour and a half. How are you doing on time, by the way, Marino?
Oh, I am okay. I am good to go.
When you need to go, let us know. Okay. Hey, Carl, how you doing? Carl, we're getting closer to deploying apps.
Before I share my screen, I'm gonna clean up my desktop a bit.
What do you have on your desktop?
Oh, a bunch of screenshots, because I'm very bad when it comes to screenshot organization. So I will go ahead and share. No problem.
I want to stitch this one. Let's stitch it. Let's go. And like we said, it takes 2 minutes to create a new one. And maybe I won't rush into creating so many things. So everyone remembers this, right? Jad Studios. We'll go for 2 nodes this time. Let's not get greedy. We'll go for small, and that's it. I don't think we ticked anything else. Literally just create cluster. Possibly, Carl, we might move away from DigitalOcean, but all the config should stay the same. So all the Kubernetes config we have, and all the work that I've done with David Flanagan on the Pulumi infrastructure as code repo, it's just I think a config change at the beginning. And my understanding is it's not a huge change. Everything we've used so far, we can still keep using. But I was just trying to see if I can deploy a pre-built WordPress app on the Kubernetes cluster, maybe have multiple ones of those. Again, I got family members projects in WordPress. I'm tired of hosting VMs, so I thought for $5 a month, get a Kubernetes cluster going. And if anything goes down, Kubernetes will restart everything already. I put my screenshots on my downloads, not on my desktop, because otherwise iCloud starts uploading them all the time, and I'm on 4G roaming, and it's just like, you've used 50 gigs of your allowance. I'm like, what? Thank you so much. Yes, I often fail on my live streams, and that's when half the people disappear, because I don't know. Everyone wants to hear success stories. No one wants to hear real life stories. They don't want to hear the truth. If people want to get into DevOps and Kubernetes, this is real life. It's all going to happen. But everyone just wants the shiny Instagram version, I think. What's the reason? The reason is Civo's cheaper. They give quite a bit of free credit as well, which is great. So we can have maybe a dev cluster that we can deploy things to as well, potentially. We have more options, and their team is more supportive. So I've never had anyone from DigitalOcean reach out. We've got 2 giveaways to give today, which you mustn't forget to do. But even the Civo team are saying, let's jump on a call and let's help you get your cluster up and running. So it's just more of a community feel, and I really, really appreciate it. So yeah, I think it's quite interesting. DigitalOcean's becoming more like AWS and GCP, where it's like, yeah, you're just a number. Sorry, DigitalOcean, but I've used DigitalOcean so much for years. Yeah. I've done videos and live streams on them. Never had anyone reach out to me. So yeah. Okay, so I've created a new one already. So that was quick, everyone. That's how quick. Even faster than Marino could share his screen. But I'm going to let him share his screen. I'm going to pop to the gents. Marino, all yours. Take it away.
All right. Thank you. Okay, let me just move this out of the way. Okay, so I've got a terminal up here. And I'll just clear my screen, and we'll just do a quick kubectl get all so you can see what I've got here. So I've got pretty much the exact same setup. The only difference between Eddie's and mine is if I don't type kubectl get mine and type kubectl get nodes instead, is that mine is just over a day old. So it's been going for a while, and I even have my my app running. The WordPress app is fully functional there. So if I take that IP and literally just dump it into my browser, there's my WordPress app, right? But I obviously do not want to remember IPs all the time. This could change on a moment's notice, because in the world of Kubernetes, we want to treat things as ephemeral and immutable. Things that are pretty much that can die at any time and come back to life in a different form. And then also objects that just cannot be changed. And we don't want to change it. We just want to recreate something that has the updated version of it. So that's what Kubernetes is offering for us today. Now, I think about DNS as a way to work around the particular problem that is IPs. And how I've gone about doing it is I've created a domain. And if I go into my networking, go into DNS, you can see that I've got one domain set up called marinowijay.info, and you can all go to it too if you wanted to. If you go to the DNS records, I didn't do what Eddie did and put a subdomain there. I actually just used my entire domain and tied that to the IP that I have, and nothing else. Right? This is the same A record that Eddie and I created probably about half an hour ago. So that being said, because I'm using a host name now. Right? If I take this exact host name and if I paste it in here, it'll take me right to my WordPress app. And I'll be honest, I'm not using any special configuration inside of my host file. So let's see hosts. You can see my host file. I literally have nothing special in there. So I'm not cheating. I'm not hacking. Actually, I didn't want to save anything there. I actually have DNS configured. I have this deployed. And quite honestly, there's nothing wrong with the way Eddie set up his cluster. I just think that there's something underlying going on with the Kubernetes API or control plane that we're targeting at the moment. But yeah, I mean, at the end of it all, once you have completed it, you have a WordPress app. Now, Eddie, I'm sure you can see my screen.
I can, and do you want to hear some bad news?
What's that?
I created a new cluster.
Mm-hmm.
I deleted the old context. I added a new context.
Mm-hmm.
I set it as default, and it's still timing out.
Interesting. It's very, very...
I busted it. I broke the internet. You can't go to google.com or anything now.
Oh, really? No, you can go to Google.
That was a joke. I haven't broken Google.
Oh, we really broke things. That radiated pretty far. Steven's like, no hacking, unsubscribes, and blocks. But yeah, I mean, as simple as literally go procuring your own domain, which you could easily do with Google Domains, GoDaddy, even Amazon offers it, or AWS offers it. Procure your domain, and then you're simply just pointing your name servers from whatever cloud provider you're using towards that domain, so that anytime someone wants to access your website, your website is out there and it's being propagated by those particular name servers. In our case, if you look here, I'm using, if I go over to my networking and if I go over to DNS, I'm using ns0.civo.com and ns1.civo.com. And I do that for redundancy in case one of them goes down versus the other one. Hey, Engine, how's it going? So yeah, that being said, if we didn't have any problems with Eddie's setup, he should have very similar results to what I had. That being said, you are all welcome to kind of take this exact example, fork it.
Let me share it in the chat as well.
Yeah. You can fork it and then you can follow along, and this actually will get you exactly to where I am at. Now, there was another thing that Eddie wanted to do, right, Eddie? You wanted to see how you could house two customers on this.
Yes, exactly.
Right? So let's do something very interesting here. I'm actually going to make another deployment very similar to what I have. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to create it in a new namespace. So in Kubernetes, while this is not the perfect tenant model, you can use namespaces to create a logical isolation of your workloads. But that doesn't necessarily mean they cannot communicate with each other. You actually have to implement some additional security policies to make that the case. But in our case, I'm just providing a logical boundary, which just allows me to say, hey, this is one customer and this is another customer. So I could go into my Kubernetes environment, and if I type in kubectl get namespaces, currently we'll only have a few, right? I'll have a default and some specific control plane namespaces. The default is housing all my workloads right now. So if I do a kubectl get pods, you'll see that my default namespace has these two workloads. But if I go in and create a new namespace and I call it customer 2 or customer 0, right? Because maybe we're starting to stage things before we actually go pre-prod. we could do so. Oh, actually, I don't have that namespace, so I have to create the namespace. By the way, Eddie, I can keep going on for another little bit longer. I don't know if you have any sort of.
No, I'm. Oh, I do. I have a meeting in 15 minutes. So
okay, so we'll be really quick. We'll be super quick.
No, but perfect. But this is really important for me, so I actually want to see this part. So you go with speed. I won't distract you.
Oh, no worries. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back and I'm going to go back to my instructions, and I'm going to copy these exact same commands. So I create my customization file again. I go ls, there's my customization. And if I do a kubectl apply -k dot and then -name, or sorry, dash namespace is customer 0. That should create that in my new namespace. So if I do a kubectl get pods dash namespace, or you could also use -n for shorthand to speed it up, customer 0. Now I have workloads that are running inside of this the same cluster, right? So if I do a kubectl get all -a, I'm just saying, give me all the resources in all my namespaces. And what are you going to see? You're actually going to see, oops, I went a little too further up here. If you see here, I have 2 instances of the same set of services right here. And if you look at my pods, I have the same set of pods both in my default namespace, but additionally in my customer namespace, but they're doing different things. They're serving different customers. So now if I actually just go up arrow and type in kubectl get all -n customer 0, I have a new load balancer IP to serve my second customer. So I can take this and I can easily go into my web browser. I can also do the DNS, magic. But the moment I put this in here, assuming that all of this comes online, actually, yeah, it's not fully up and operational yet.
I have a question. So now you've got a second external load balancer. So I guess, is there a way you could share the same load balancer as well? Oh, nice.
So on the back end, right, what's actually going on is and I think Civo will mimic a lot of other cloud providers as well. There's actually a single logical load balancer that's spun up, and you're just consuming an IP. But I think in this case, these are managed from within the cluster, and there is a charge of $10 per load balancer per month. So you can't share them. I think they spin up separate ones or separate instances. Okay. But that all creates a level of diversity here. And I think that's because you don't have the level of flexibility to go in and modify these ones, because they're primarily tied to the Kubernetes cluster that you create. But there are approaches where you can actually go in, manually create Kubernetes the hard way, which I don't know why anyone would want to do today, and then also create your own load balancer service, and then divvy that up however you want to. So you're cutting back on the resource consumption. It takes a lot more work, but you can absolutely achieve it.
Got you.
But that being said, because I just launched it, there's my WordPress app. Even though I haven't fully set it up and online, it's a separate customer. It's a new customer.
Awesome. Yeah. And the other thing I was thinking of, when I did it with Sid and Stephen, we used something called Ingress. I think that allowed us to share the load balancer. Would you mind sharing a bit more about that?
Yes. So that's a little bit advanced, because now you're able to set up HTTP rules, routing rules altogether. And what that means is, like you just mentioned, and like Sid's mentioned, you can use a single load balancer there, set up your HTTP rules to direct them to different backend environments. So you're slicing up your load balancer that way. So that is, that's great. I'm glad you brought that point up. That is a great mechanism. One thing I will say, though, is that the whole ingress controller and resource approach is, I think, going to be deprecated at some point in time in favor of some newer functionality deployed by something called the Gateway API. I don't know if this is going to be for sure, but this is what I suspect. That being said, there are other technologies outside of that just single standalone Kubernetes ecosystem you could take advantage of that provide pretty much what you just described.
Got you. Yeah, because I like the idea of having one load balancer. I don't have that much traffic that each client, each family member having a WordPress site would need their own. I know in a real life high availability, you'd probably want that. But in terms of, I think most use cases for people here and to keep costs down as well, using something like Ingress, allowing us to have one load balancer and then having Ingress decide which services it should go through. So that's just a bit more YAML config. I think it's like another section, isn't it, in that block, right? Is that correct?
Of what? Of this right here?
So no, sorry. In your in our YAML config for Kubernetes, we had services, we had deployment, we had. If you wanted Ingress, I think it would be another kind of section. In there.
Yes, that's right. That's right. You would actually have your another resource called the Ingress resource, which still requires an Ingress controller. Okay. And you can deploy an Ingress controller either Nginx, or there's something called Project Contour, or you can even deploy something called like Envoy, which is a very well-known proxy to provide that same Ingress capability. At Solo, we have something called Glue Edge and Glue Mesh that do the exact same thing. So that's another option too, and they're open source as well. Nice. So these provide some extensible, feature-rich capabilities as well.
If someone wants to get started with something simple for those, what would you recommend over? I can pull your screen off. There we go.
Oh yeah.
What would you recommend in terms of for Ingress? Would you say they use Nginx? That you mentioned some other names I can't remember now, but what
Envoy.
Envoy.
Envoy would be a great start, but it's a little complex to get familiar with and use. But it's very extensible. Obviously, not for the getting started, but Project Contour, however, is an excellent way to get started with an Ingress resource to better understand it, and then start creating things like HTTP rules so that you could still share the same load balancer, but have different backend destinations. And you just do this using intelligent routing. Yeah. And even based off of what Steven said, HA proxy, Istio even. Istio is amazing because I work in that space. And then Traffic is another option as well.
Interesting. Okay, I'm gonna have to look. I have so much to learn. I'm just looking for the simple options. I don't want anything like super fancy. I just want something to work.
Project Contour is going to be the best way to go.
Okay, got you. Project Contour. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, probably a good place to end. I tried mine again. I don't know why mine is bust. Maybe just reboot and see.
Yeah.
Not a good start, but it's live stream. It's bound to happen. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to follow Marino. I just shared his Twitter and in the chat and his GitHub as well. Marino, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate it. Everyone, before you leave, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe below. Marino, I'm going to bring up a holding page, but I'd love to say a thank you personally afterwards if you can hang on for a couple more minutes.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone.
I love it that everyone's is saying thank you. Do you have any shout outs, anything coming up, any Twitter spaces, any live streams, anything you want to shout out before we go?
Yes, a couple of things. So I'm looking to, a few things. I'm actually looking to do a GraphQL Twitter space. So if anyone here in the audience is interested, let me know, and I'd be happy to put you on as a speaker. I am not doing any travel for the next month. So if you want to do a coffee chat, feel free to reach out, send me a DM on Twitter, and we'll set that up. I will be heading out to the UK at the end of September, and hopefully Eddie and I will get to connect live in person to hang out and geek out a little bit. I'll also be doing a speaking session at kubectl out in Edinburgh in Scotland. So I'm looking forward to that. And several other things throughout the rest of the year. Shout outs wise, I just want to throw a shout out to Kunal. Kunal is amazing. I don't even need to give you his Twitter handle, but you all know who he is. Fantastic person out there. And then that's really it. Thank you so much for having me on, Eddie. It was such a fun time hacking away at this.
Oh yes, AK remind us giveaway. We completely forgot. Oh my God, thank you so much. That would have been like an epic fail by me. So how are we gonna do this? So I think we should maybe pick who's been pretty active. Like if you had to pick one person who's been active in the chat, asking questions, showing support, who would you pick? I'll let you pick Marino. But what kind of, without looking too hard at the chat, like off the top of your head, what have you seen come up from the beginning of the live stream?
So I saw definitely Sid for sure, and then also I saw a lot of Praduma. And
Yes.
then
We've only got two. We've only got two, though. We've only got two.
Because I also want to throw a shout out to Steven, because literally Steven has been so supportive throughout the entire stream. So thank you, Steven.
Do you want to do the spinning wheel? Should we put 3 in there and we get 2 winners? Should we do spinning wheel? Okay.
You're all winners to me, but let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. All right, we'll do spinning wheel. Marino selected a few people. Let me. What's it called? Wheel of names. Okay, let me share my screen. Let's have a look. So wheel of names. We've got Steve. We got Sid. And we got Praduma. Anything out? Anyone else? Or was that a good place to go?
I think that's a good place to start.
Okay, let's go. So we're going to pick 2 winners. So first winner. Oh, Mikhail's been here from the beginning though as well. Sorry, Mikhail. You've been a bit quiet on the chat though. Okay, first winner is Sid. Okay,
yes.
So awesome. Good call out. Right, before we spin again, do we want to add anyone else? Just add Mikhail in there. Come on. He's been there from the beginning. Okay. As well. Okay. It's Civo swag bag. I think it's got like a t-shirt and a mug and stickers and stuff.
We should probably add Sid back in there, just to make it fair.
Oh yeah, to do it again. I was going to say he's a winner already, but okay. So we're going to add Sid and then run it 2 more times, right?
Yeah.
Okay, 2 more times. Ready? Let's go. So let's see who the 2 winners are. So the first one was a test run. Let's go. Who have we got? Praduma. Hey! Awesome. Okay, congratulations. And then that's the first winner then. And the second winner, let's spin it again. Let's go. I'm conscious of my next call in like 9 minutes.
I would have the same anxiety.
And Mikhail, right.
All right.
So sorry. Okay, awesome. Thank you all so much. That was great fun. I'm going to bring up the holding page and we'll see you all on the live stream very, very soon. Yeah. Thank you again so much, Marino. Marino, I'm going to go up during the countdown. I don't have time to speak to you afterwards for my next call. So we'll catch up on DMs later. Thank you so much again for helping. I loved everyone's support. Thank you, everyone. Let's bring up the holding page. Have a great week, everyone. Bye.